Hello. Hello, all two of you. Let's wait for a few more to come in. I have no idea why that countdown timer's got that weird music. I'm sure it didn't have it last time I did it, but it's quite odd. Sorry, if anyone's just joined us, we just did a countdown timer and it had this weird kind of trippy dance music to it, which is really off-brand. But nevertheless, here we are live once again for another one of our whiskey tastings featuring this month's whiskey, which is Nc'Nean batch 01. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce this month's guest, which is Matt Hastings from Nc'Nean Distillery. Not at Nc'Nean Distillery right now, sadly. I'm going to bring him in and then we'll chat and you'll find out there's a sort of history with him and nothing weird, don't worry. And we'll talk more about that in a minute, but let's get going. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Good, Tris, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Oh, there you go. I've made us a little bit bigger. So, Matthew, you've not been working for Nc'Nean that long, have you?
No. 7 months now, if my LinkedIn profile's to be believed.
And tell me, what were you doing before you worked for Nc'Nean Distillery?
I was working for two very talented young bartenders in London for a company called Fluid Movement, who got a few fingers in a few pies. They run the best specialist bar in the country, Black Rock, 4 years running.
Yeah.
They've got a whiskey subscription business called whisky-me.
It's us.
Tris, it's you.
I was confused there. So yes, if you didn't catch on to Matt's subtle suggestions there, Matt actually used to work with us for how many years? Long time.
About 5 years, yeah.
About 5 years, which is a pretty long time in the drinks industry, in a variety of roles. But for about a year or so, Matt ran whisky-me. When it was sort of in earlier stages, and did a really good job of it as well. So
thank you very much.
For those of you who've been with us for a while, you'll sort of be aware of Matt because he was the person that used to do our social media and used to stick labels on envelopes and all that sort of thing. So you got him to thank for the fact that your whiskey actually got to you most months. And if you emailed us saying it didn't get to you, then it was probably Matt that emailed back.
That dealt with it, yeah. I certainly do not miss putting on 2,000 labels on envelopes every month.
So anyway, it's cool that we can go full circle and that Matt's now joining us as his new role as ambassador, and it turns out whiskey blender for Nc'Nean Distillery. And Matt, I'm going to hand it straight over to you. I hope you're ready.
Yeah, sure.
To talk us through a little bit about Nc'Nean, because I think most people who have received this whiskey this month will not have heard of this distillery.
Yeah, almost definitely.
Yeah, and I would say nearly no one who's received this whiskey this month would have tasted it because it's really hot off the press.
Yeah, so, it's proving difficult to get hold of for pretty much everybody, including me.
We have been so lucky to get stocks of it to be able to send out to all of our members. So we appreciate that. Thank you. But do you want to talk through a little bit about the distillery? So before we get to tasting, which we will get to because I really want to taste it. Do you want to talk through a little bit about the founding of the distillery, where it is, what it's about, what sort of style of whiskey it's producing? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, cool. So the story starts in like 2012 with Annabelle, our CEO founder. That's the one. She left her job in the city in London to start a whiskey distillery. So she spent a couple of years raising funding and then a couple of years actually building it up on the very west coast of Scotland. If you're lucky enough to have one of our boxes, you can see a little topographical map. But if you basically head for the Isle of Mull, head to Tobermory and Tobermory Bay with all the pretty houses. If you look directly over the water back to the mainland, that's where we are, which is an impossible location for a whiskey distillery.
Yeah, I've been there actually around about a year ago, and it took so long to get there. It was crazy. I flew into Glasgow, and I think it was about a 4 or 5 hour drive from Glasgow.
Yeah, it's like 5.5 hours. It's mad.
Yeah,
my last trip was 11 hours travel to get to the distillery.
Which is interesting because, like, I don't know, the visitor experience thing is sort of becoming more and more popular in Scotch whiskey. So it's it's an interesting distillery, an interesting decision to locate it so far away from everything. I mean, it's a lovely part of the world. I suppose if you're in Tobermory, then can you get a ferry across or something like that?
Like very rarely. I think there's like a water taxi, but it runs every 7th Sunday under a full moon or whatever. It's really the only like realistic way of getting there is to drive once you get to either a major Scottish city, or if you can get to like Oban and then little ferries. And one of our employees actually managed to get there on public transport twice, which was amazing. The second time, I think, the first or second time, she ended up getting on a school bus. Like flagged down a school bus to get to the distillery.
Oh my god!
So yeah, it's remote. It's there because that's Annabelle's family's estate. It's a beautiful estate-driven estate, and they wanted to do something else with the land, something interesting. And obviously, being in Scotland, whiskey makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's what the distillery looks like there.
It is. It's a little courtyard. It's the old farm buildings that have been gutted and reconverted. There's actually a really nice time lapse hidden somewhere on our YouTube channel, so you can see how it was all put together. And it's certainly not going to come apart anytime soon because everything has to be put through those windows to get into the building.
I like a picture of the stills there as well from inside.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, so the idea of the distillery of the company as a whole is to make the best possible spirits with the smallest possible footprint. So everything that we do is designed to be first and foremost delicious, obviously, because we're not going to last very long in the whiskey industry if we're not selling delicious juice. But secondly, and equally as importantly, being more sustainable and better for the environment as a whole, helping your luxuries not to have such a taxing burden on the rest of humanity. Yeah,
sure. And everything's powered by a wood burning steam, right?
Yeah. So we have a biomass boiler on site which powers the stills. So most distilleries use fossil fuels in one way or another, whether that's gas or coal or whatever, that all power steam for steam coils. We've got the on-site biomass boiler, so we harvest trees from the estate, we let them dry for a year, we chip them, and then we use them. Which, when I was first told about that, I thought that obviously can't be better for the environment if you're cutting down trees and burning them. But one is we replant everything, so that's relatively nice offset. But two is the actual reduction in carbon emissions is enormous. It's a 90% reduction using fuel from the estate rather than using fossil fuels. So we emit something like 35 tons of CO2 per year compared to 350 for a similar sized distillery.
Oh, interesting. And that's accounted because it requires so much carbon just to get the fossil fuels out of the ground in the first place. Is that what it is?
It doesn't even factor that in. It's purely on emissions. So even if you're talking about getting the fuels out of the ground and getting the fuels to the distillery, which would be even more of a chore, there's more savings to be had along the way even then.
Okay.
So it's definitely the most logical and ecological choice for us to use trees from the estate.
Okay. So batch one. More to follow, obviously. It'd be a bit of a disaster if that was it, wouldn't it?
I bloody hope so, yeah.
Probably this would be worth saving rather than drinking now. So when was this released? It was like weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, weeks ago. So we launched at the start of September. This is our first sort of commercial offering. We had a private release as such. So the first release is called Nc'Nean, which is Gaelic for maiden. 1,320 bottles, only sold to investors in the distillery, cask owners, and to sort of our newsletter subscribers, basically. So people that have been on board from the start. That sold out in 36 hours. Apart from the first 10 bottles, so they're all numbered. So 1 to 10, we auctioned for charity, with the funds going to the Drinks Trust, who look after bartenders in England and Wales, the Ben, who look after bartenders in Scotland, the Morven Community Trust, who are a local community, Trees for Life, who are a replanting project in Scotland, aiming to regenerate wildlife, and the Farmland Trust in Scotland. So they buy up farmland and then lease it to young farmers looking to getting into organic farming, basically.
How much did those first 10 go for, do you know?
Quite a lot. So
if it's the charity, we can divulge, right? No?
Yeah, of course, yeah. So it was all public. So bottle number 1 went for £41,004, which
this is the
smashed
same
the world
liquid, right?
record.
It's the same liquid. It's numbered bottles.
So the release was cask strength. So we've got the same
Matt, you
cask
broke up a little
varieties,
bit there.
the
Can
same
you just start
ratio,
again
the
on the
same
liquid?
age. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that charity release was at cask strength.
Mm.
And then this first official release is the same casks in the same ratio at the same age. Obviously just different cask numbers. And it's proof down to 46 rather than being the initial release was 60.3.
Okay.
But yeah, we ended up in those 10 bottles raising about £92,000 for charity, which is
great. Good
not
stuff.
bad.
Fantastic. So, tell us a little bit about the liquid itself. There's no age statement on this, but it's young, right? I mean, 3.5 years old, something like that.
It's 3, yeah. So all of the liquid here was distilled. I think it's April, May, and July from 13.5 different casks.
Okay.
So yeah, it's 3 years and a handful of months. Our spirit is designed to be young in perpetuity. So we're not releasing it early, trying to make a quick buck, and then we'll release a 10 and a 12 year further down the line. We will always be releasing young whiskey as the sort of the core expression of Nc'Nean, because we've designed the spirit to be this young, bright, fresh, fruity liquid that is ready quite quickly. We're very fortunate to have Dr. Jim Swan as our initial consultant. And he's brought this recipe of yeasts and flavor profile with the stills together that is intentionally very citrusy and sort of stone fruits and creamy, very creamy and rich. We get really high levels of like fatty esters that just stick to your tongue, which is delicious.
Yeah. And then the barrels you use as well play a part in that too, right?
Yeah, big time. So we've got 2 different cask varieties that we use for everything in Nc'Nean. We use ex-bourbon casks, the same as more or less the rest of Scotland.
Everyone else, yeah.
Which for us produce quite lemony, creamy flavors. And then we use STR red wine casks, which is a Jim Swan specialty. So 5 to 7 year old Portuguese red wine casks where we shave 2 millimeters off of the inside once they've been used for wine, retoast them, rechar them, and then use them to age liquid. And you get very quick, rapid maturation, but it's very rich and full and complicated in a short amount of time.
Interesting. Cool. All right. Well, let's get to tasting it then, or smelling it.
Please.
First, at least.
Cheers.
Cheers. I mean, for me, I don't know, it's because you emphasize creamy, but I've got this before, and there's a creaminess to it, and I get a sort of summer fruits note to it as well. So it's got this sort of strawberries and cream, or berries and cream, some of those esters you mentioned coming through. I find it to be like just a really lovely, floral, fragrant, slightly summery dram.
Yeah, it's very bright, and I mean intentionally so. The idea of the liquid is we want more people to be getting into whiskey, and the best way of doing that is obviously to make something delicious, but picking those accessible flavors that make it easier to get in. We're also very much not opposed to people mixing our liquid. In fact, it's on the side of the bottle if you ever grab a bottle. So we've got a recipe for what we call a whiskey 6 on the side, which is can be in out of the reflections. 2 parts whiskey, 4 parts soda with a sprig of fresh mint, ideally to be consumed at 6 p.m. Which is
give us a close up of the bottle there, Matt, because it's a really cool bottle.
Thank you. Yeah.
What are the sort of botanical things, this local stuff that's growing around by the water there near the distillery?
This is all flora from around the distillery and some of the barley that we use just hiding at the back there. The bottle itself is 100% clear recycled glass, which is a first for the UK, especially single malt Scotch whiskey. The reason we use it, obviously we think it looks cool. It does have a slight green tinge. It does have minor imperfections in the bottle, but it drastically reduces the carbon footprint of production. We've got a 40% reduction in carbon footprint from the bottle's production alone, let alone harvesting sand that you need to make new clear glass bottles. This a really big thing in making clear glass bottles is that they require 95% raw material going in rather than glass to get that clarity, which is, it's not only sort of carbon intensive to mine it out of the ground, but it's then even more carbon intensive to melt that into glass than it is just to melt glass that already exists.
Yeah. So talking about mixing, do you think like being a younger whiskey, it's sort of gives it more opportunities in that sense, like for highballs and stuff like that. Because I actually think this would be great just mixed with soda water and ice, like whiskey highball.
The stuff on the side of the bottle, that's what we want to be drinking. It's a really nice, delicate way of. Did my internet cut there?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay, back. Yeah, we want people to be mixing with soda water, and well, mixing however they choose. But a whiskey and soda is a fantastic drink anyway, and it works particularly well with Nc'Nean because we've got that creamier, fattier element that works really, really well with soda water. You get a much creamier, richer mouthfeel from the finished drink as well.
Yeah,
sort of the bubbles help enhance that.
I can imagine the bubbles will work really, really well with this one. Because I always find if you're mixing highballs, you don't want too much wood influence anyway. You want some of that distillery character, that fruit, that vibrancy. That'll probably work really well. Right, let's get some questions. Here we go. If you've got any questions, by all means, type them in the comments, and we're gonna put them up here.
What about the cork?
Is it special?
The cork is relatively special. We do try to think of every element. So even on the bottle, where we've got like the printing, that's a water-based ink for the printing physically on the bottle. So again, no hydrocarbons. The tamper seal is fully biodegradable as well, so less plastic. The cork itself is 100% biodegradable in that we use natural cork and natural wood, but and it's pretty. It's engraved.
I suppose you could say that most corks are pretty special in that they're made out of wood, right?
Yeah. So it's special to us.
Doggy. You mentioned around 13 casks are used to make this. What casks are you using? So you did mention what cask you're using, but can you give us an idea on what the split is here?
Yeah. So it's 65% STR red wine casks to 35% ex-bourbon casks. So the STRs are going to provide that bit of spiciness and the red berry flavors more than anything. And then the ex-bourbon's there with the vanilla, the creaminess, the citrus, the delicacy.
And so is that cask split reflected in your current warehouse stocks, or are you expecting future releases to be a different ratio?
It's not reflected in the warehouse stocks at all. Obviously, you have to plan, even if with a 3-year-old whiskey, you have to plan 3 years in advance. So our warehouse for the last 3 years, we've been filling 50-50 when we're on young recipes. So we run 3 different recipes per year using different yeast strains, basically. So 80% of production is young recipe, which is what we're tasting. That's a mixture of anchor and fermenters, so 2 different yeasts, 1 traditional distilling yeast, 1 fruity wine yeast, basically. Then we have 10% of the year is old recipe, which is just the traditional distiller's yeast, wider cut points, and it will make a different spirit. We're not going to taste that until it's 10 years. I don't know what that's like yet. But then for the remaining 10% of the year, we run yeast trials. So we just find fun yeast from around the world, whatever we fancy using for like a 2 or 3 week period, and test it and see what comes out. So we've done champagne yeast, we've done rum yeast. We've just finished a trial with a company called Ferric Spirits to it's like a recreation of an old style of European wine yeast that's apparently producing really, really pineapple-y flavors, which I am very excited to taste next time I'm up at the distillery.
Sounds rummy, that does.
Yeah.
Right, cool. Any more questions, then chuck them up. If not, have we got some comments here? Lots of people saying it's smooth, and like for a 3-year-old, that it's surprisingly sort of well resolved, I guess. And we're getting a lot of sort of desserts descriptions as well: custard, clotted cream, that kind
Everything
of thing.
delicious in life.
Yeah, just sort of sweet stuff, really. Yeah. Cool. So when is the batch 2 going to be out?
Cool. So batch 2 is being bottled as we speak. Hopefully it will hit shelves.
Oh, look, Stuart just asked exactly the same question. There you go.
Yeah.
Great minds, Stuart. Great minds.
Yeah, I'm hoping in about 2 weeks' time. We've got batch 2 bottling now. Batch 3 is ready to be vatted and rest. So hopefully there won't be too much of a delay between some more whiskey being released. I know it's selling out everywhere very quickly wherever we put it, as first release tend to, especially when there's only a little amount of them.
Yeah. All right, good stuff. And you're enjoying life at Nc'Nean? You're not. You don't want your old job back, do you?
No, I'm okay, thanks.
Oh, he's hung up on me now.
It's
Great.
such a fun company to work for. Oh, have I? Sorry.
You just
sorry,
froze.
I'm back. Just immediately hang up. No, I don't want to come back. No, it's an amazing company to work for. Obviously, we're a very small team. There's, I think, 9.5 of us technically that work there. Everyone is lovely, which is really, really nice.
Good. Oh, well, unlike your previous job.
Unlike my previous job, where I was
some people are asking where they can buy it, which we will get it on the whisky-me website. So if it's not on there right now, then it will be on there very soon. So keep checking.
We can make sure we
price,
send out
how much is it? What is the RRP?
RRP is $49.95 with a gift box and $47.95 without. Again, another sort of ecological touch of if you don't need unnecessary packaging, then don't use it.
Exactly. Yeah. This is the thing. A lot of whiskies come burdened with packaging these days, and a lot of the time, especially if you're like me and these bottles don't last very long, it's just like getting crushed. I'm standing on it to get it in the recycling box, you know.
Yeah, building a little Lego house out of whiskey boxes.
Well, actually, my daughter is quite keen on taking any packaging whatsoever that comes into the house and converting it into some sort of like craft project. And yeah, whiskey boxes don't escape that either. So. All right, cool. Well, Matt, thanks so much for coming on. It's good to see you, mate. Haven't seen you for ages.
Yeah, I know. There's been a minor national lockdown that has prevented my frequent excursions to Cornwall.
And it's good to have Nc'Nean featured, and thanks for sorting that out, because it's not easy to get hold of this stuff at the moment, and we got hold of quite a lot of bottles of it. So I hope that everyone's sort of happy with what we've sent them, and I think it's really good to sort of feature these new distilleries and to see what they're up to and to see how these liquids mature. And for those of you who plan on sticking with us for a while, we'll see. I mean, I know you said it's always going to be young whiskies, but I expect you'll go beyond 3 years at times, and it'll be nice to see how some of these liquids progress over the years, and how this sort of distillery profile matures and blossoms.
Yeah, it's well, I want to thank you, because it's really nice getting more people the opportunity to actually taste this liquid. Far too much of our bottles are purchased and never opened. So if I can guarantee 2,000 or so people are actually getting it on their lips, then I'm a very happy boy.
Well, we opened quite a lot. So All right. Cheers, Matt, and thanks everyone for tuning in. We'll see you next month. And remember, you can still leave comments as well if you wish to do so, and we'll try and reply to them once we've finished drinking whiskey. All right, thanks.